The Honourable Stevie Chadwick.
One has to wonder where that member was a decade ago if he thinks this is all peace and light. And, Mr Speaker, Labour will definitely be opposing this bill. There is an element of this bill that we don't have a problem with at all, and that's about the amalgamation of Foundation for Research, Science and Technology with the Ministry of Research, Science and Technology to this new Ministry of Science and Innovation. We think that's great. That's fine, and I think we're going to wait with great interest about what's going to emerge from this new Ministry of Science and Innovation, especially with Minister Mapp at the helm. You know, great things are obviously, anything could happen at all. But the aspect of this bill that we are very opposed to for very serious reasons, the proposed merger of National Archives and the National Library into the Department of Internal Affairs. These institutions, Mr Speaker, are a key part of our democracy, absolutely key. They're about keeping government departments transparent and information held in those departments protected. When the Minister for the State Sector came down and gave his opening speech on the State Sector Management Bill, it was the most limp speech that I've ever seen. It was quietly given in a measured way, and it looked like it wouldn't panic the punters, Mr Chair. But actually, behind this shows the determination of the National Party to continue an unrelenting attack on public servants that they see just as bureaucrats, just as bean counters, not as people that value their job, do their job with passion, do their job with pride, and take great seriousness about the role and the functions of their job. He saw this in his speech as simply a little merger, tucking the National Archives, tucking the National Library, that iconic Alexander Turnbull Library, pop it into Internal Affairs. Don't worry, we've sorted everything out about the roles and functions of the National Librarian. We've sorted out the roles of the Chief Archivist. Trust us, we know what we're doing. It looked all very simple. It sort of even looked logical, but actually behind it there is this insidious and unrelenting lack of respect, actually, for public servants who have done their job. I found it interesting when Colin King stood up, gave a silly little speech, just reading the opening paragraph, because they've been told just to speak for about 10 seconds on every bill, so they'll be out of here by about midday. But Dr. King, Mr. King wasn't around a decade ago. A decade ago, there was a failed experiment with the archives being put under Internal Affairs. What goes round comes around. Now we're doing it again. Relationships were so bad there between the Department of Internal Affairs and the archives that they went to court 10 years ago. 10 years ago. So what a waste of time, what a waste of money. And the Minister could only come up with the justification here that this great merger, all in the name of increased efficiency, better services for the public, better accountability, great improvements in quality of service provision from these so-called bureaucrats who are wonderful, respected professionals in their job, will only save $165,000. This is a department, Archives and National Library have always had an absolutely clean audit from the Department of Audit, no problems with them, nothing that needed to be tidied up. They do their job professionally as standalone entities. So why in the name of efficiency would you merger them into the Department of Internal Affairs for the princely sum of saving of $165,000, but put at risk in future grievances that could arise again, because the Chief Archivist and the National Librarian are third-tier positions. Third-tier positions that will not even have face-to-face meetings on a weekly basis with the Chief Executive of the Internal Affairs. And I think that is an absolute insult. If the ministers of the Crown, Tony Ryle or Nathan Guy, and actually Chris Finlayson, who does know about the importance of library and archives and the material and the functions that they are preserving, if Chris Finlayson had been a little bit more aware of what was being proposed by stealth by Tony Ryle and been a bit more aware and read his cabinet papers in time, he would have jumped and said that is a foolish move, an absolutely flawed move that took us to court. He knows, as a lawyer, he knows the risks. If the public record is not kept transparent and held into account, it was Minister Finlayson that knows the risk. He did not challenge, he failed to challenge Nathan Guy and Tony Ryle, and so this cute little merger, this cute little amalgamation went through, and look at the resulting effect. 15 jobs are lost. Only 15, says Tony Ryle. 15 jobs, what's that? That's great, all in the name of efficiency. These aren't just jobs. These are people that hold to account and know how you manage the public record of both libraries, how you look after that body of historical archival material held by the Alexander Turnbull Library. This is not something that gets merged with the Department of Internal Affairs quite easily, doesn't affect their roles because we've sorted those out in here. I think it's an absolute disgrace. They must have statutory independence, and their independence is limited if they become part of the Department of Internal Affairs. And what happened a decade ago when this happened? It was logical. They struggled to find a voice. And if they're put into third-tier level of management in a huge department, a burgeoning huge department, then where are they going to get their voice? Where are they going to get their independence? How can they, the chief librarian and the chief archivist, go and meet their minister? That will not happen, and so they are going to be swallowed up and struggle to get a voice talking for the record that they manage. This is absolutely stupid move. It's a flawed move. It's already caused great distress out in the library and the archives sector of New Zealand. These aren't fuddy-duddy bureaucrats threatened about the loss of a job. They are there to preserve the function of their job, and it has been shown that they have an excellent record. So for $165,000 a year and 15 jobs lost, we are thinking that this is a great little cute move, and it's not. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the merger is not necessary at all. It will not generate better public services. It is driven purely by an ideological desire to reduce the number of government agencies. This is flawed logic. The Minister for Arts, Culture and Heritage failed to represent and advocate for archives and for library as very important functions of a creative country and a sector that has a great sense of history. It will fail, and watch what happens with the next audit report, and we are going to argue this quite more in depth when we get into the committee stage.